Blackbeard didn't inherit Rocks Zebek's will, but he is Rocks. Blackbeard didn't want to eat the Yummy Yummy Nummy, he had to eat it first. The Saber of Zebek is much more than a cool name for Teach's ship. I mean, after all, Sapperpole Aegis Zero acts as a shield for the world government, and their name is a literal Latin translation for shield. So it only makes sense that the guy who was killed for getting too close to world government's secret to name his vessel's ship after a sword. Saber of Zebek, sword versus shield, the perfect name for the man who is choosing to weaponize his powers against the world nobles and defeat them once and for all. This theory has multiple layers. If I can convince you even part of my super theory is true, your prize is hitting that gorgeous like button. My like goal for this video will be 100 likes. That is doubling my most liked video. But I did so much research for this, I was written up at work for One Piece on the clock. So breaking my like record will help me justify my questionable life decisions. One of the core concepts of One Piece is inherited wills, a form of reincarnation on its own. But by the end of this video, I will convince you that Blackbeard is Rocks. I believe that is made possible by the Transmigration Paramecia devil fruit, a reincarnation type devil fruit that was eaten by Rocks, and that is allowing him to possess Blackbeard and use him as a conduit for his revenge, explaining why Teach named his ship the Saber of Zebek, an exact metaphor for not only how he would use him as a weapon to take revenge on the world nobles, but also pirates as well. Even though the pirates and the world government and by extension the Navy are natural enemies, they still collaborated to defeat him at the notorious God Valley incident. Quickly, Rocks was a legendary pirate who ruled the seas before Roger's rise. By many metrics, his ambitions were even greater than Roger's and Luffy's combined. He didn't just want to be the pirate king, he wanted to be king of the world. Through these unfaltering ambitions, he not only killed and conquered pirates, he also took direct hostilities towards the world government. In chapter 957, Sengoku referred to them as a terrorist organization. He went on to explain that Rocks had a deep interest in knowledge and history. He was especially curious about the secrets the world governments kept hidden from the rest of the world. But after engaging in many of the world's quote taboo subjects, he was deemed the world government's most dangerous enemy. Thanks to Blackbeard's Beaver card, we know he also had an affinity for historical knowledge and research, or at least one of him does, and this is only one of the many parallels they share. Interestingly enough, Sengoku also referred to Rocks as Roger's first and greatest rival, and that's saying a lot, considering Roger's other rivals consisted of other legendary figures like Whitebeard himself, the world's strongest man, Golden Lion Shiki, the first person to escape from Impel Down, and the hero of the Navy himself. This would also explain the unlikely team up at the God Valley incident, where Rocks led his subordinates on a mission that would endanger celestial dragons. The world government was forced to send the strongest person in their arsenal, the hero of the Navy, Monkey D. Garp. He was accompanied by the Pirate King himself. They teamed up to defeat the unstoppable man and halt his ascension to ruler of everything. For now, you know I think Rocks ate the Transmigration fruit. This is why Blackbeard had to eat the dark fruit. People think the reason Teach enacted his plan and waited 20 years in the shadows of Whitebeard to find the dark fruit because he was a coward and it was his best defense against the powerful devil users in the world because of its unique and powerful defensive capabilities that help nullify devil fruit powers. But I'm saying he had to eat the dark fruit because of the other soul that was inhabiting his body already. That soul, being Rocks Zebek, had already eaten one, the Transmigration fruit, and the nullifying effects of the dark fruit is the only way his body would not explode if he ate another fruit. The nullifying ability doesn't just work when Teach uses his black energy attacks, it also works in anything that he is touching. When he grabbed both Ace and Luffy, neither of them was able to use their powers. With his bare hands, he nullified them. So it only makes sense that it'll work on itself as well. And now imagine, Oda doesn't really do coincidences, so I feel like he wouldn't have gathered this specific trait for nothing. So if any version of this is true, that was his only choice out of all the devil fruits. If he wanted to eat more, that had to be the first one. Think about this. We know that devil fruit powers remain active in the soul based on when Brook came back to life. Although he was just a soul, he was still able to retain the powers of his devil fruit. He was able to use move with Soul Solid or even astral project his soul from his body. Additionally, we know that Brook's body rotted away in the year he spent floating above the Florian Triangle in just his soul form. This proves that devil fruits don't solely, get it? Solely because he's a skeleton? Sorry about that. That they don't solely get attached to bodies, but they also get attached to the souls as well. If fruits were only attached to the body when Brook's body died, his fruit would have reappeared somewhere else in the world and he would not be able to use his powers anymore, even though he got a second chance at life. It would have served its purpose, since fruits move on after the user's death. The fruit's powers must be soul-based rather than biological. If the soul of Rocks was reincarnated or transmigrated into Teach, the dark fruit was his only option. This would explain that if Rocks ate the Transmigration fruit, the negative effects of that, which would be exploding, had to be negated by the dark fruit. It was the only way they could survive together in the same body. I know I keep interchangeably using the word reincarnation and transmigration, so let me explain. The word reincarnation is broken down as kari, meaning flesh, incarnation of the soul or spirit entering the human body. This is not to get confused with resurrection. This is closer to where Brook's power is, right? He was reborn again in the same body. Transmigration, on the other hand, is when the soul is transferred to another living being. Reincarnation and resurrection is very important because we know that Oda knows and uses both of the examples in One Piece. But why am I so confident in Rox's soul rebirth theory? That lies in the unique characteristics of souls and wills Oda has laid out for us. Take the words of the late great pirate Edward Newgate. Whitebeard told Son Goku, quote, "Just like there are people who will carry on Roger's will," we assume it's Luffy, "I'm sure someone will appear to carry on Ace's will someday. You may eradicate their bloodline, but their flame will never die." There are countless examples of inherited wills in One Piece. There's several comparisons to Luffy and Roger, even by Roger's first mate Rayleigh. More recently in Wano, Yamato taking on Odin's will, even going as far as using his name. But then there is more complex version of the will concept in One Piece, like the Joy Boy will. We know that Joy Boy was a name of a person that actually existed in the void century, but it also seems that Joy Boy is a title or energy that can be inherited. Although we don't completely understand this force, we know that it's something that does exist. When Luffy loses to Kaido in chapter 1014, Kaido shared his disappointment by saying, quote, "Looks like you couldn't be Joy Boy either," meaning he knows the next Joy Boy spirit will have an inheritor, but he isn't sure if it's Luffy like he previously hoped. That explains the wills, but what about the personalities? Think about this. Even though Brook didn't have a brain, he was able to keep the exact same personality when he came back. But do you want more concrete evidence? Well, that lies in Gecko Moria's ability. The Kagekage no Miya is the shadow fruit. First, it is extremely important to understand that shadows in One Piece act as second souls. Moria is able to cut shadows out of his victims and then insert them into corpses, which will then be brought back into the world of the living. This is where Oda is basically telling us straight up how souls work in One Piece. That is where the personality lies. Their corpses keep the physical attributes it had before it died, but its personality and skill set come from the soul that was inserted into the corpse. When Zoro battled and defeated Ryuma, he wasn't satisfied because with the victory, he knew he basically just defeated Brook, but with a stronger body. The Ryuma corpse even acted exactly like Brook, yo-ho-ho and all. And think about when the corpse Sanji's shadow was put into, it couldn't even hit a woman, even though it was forced to by the fruit's power to obey Moria. Because that's something Sanji's personality couldn't get past, it wouldn't do it, even with the magic of Devil Fruit. Simply put, soul equals personality in One Piece. This is very important when it comes to Blackbeard, so keep that in mind also. And the nail in the coffin is finally a Big Mom's Devil Fruit, the Sora Sora no Miya, the soul fruit that is primarily focused on lost man theft. But the only important part of this is she is able to physically transmigrate people's souls. Transmigration again in One Piece. This is important because that proves transmigration exists in the One Piece world. And because we know that souls and personalities are one and the same, this concludes Blackbeard's multiple personality theories that people talk about. He has to have multiple souls. We know that Teach has the oddest combination of personality traits. On one hand, Teach is a Machiavellian evil genius who played a chess game with the entirety of the world's great powers, manipulating all parties involved. But other times, he is carefree, silly, almost downright reckless, almost mirroring Luffy when you really think about it. I mean, he got into an eating spat with Luffy and Jaya for the dumbest reason. He's also dumb enough to walk right up to the ward of Impel Down and get covered in poison, almost dying if it wasn't for Shiro having an antidote. Not to mention he was careless enough to drop his guard, almost getting one-shotted by Luffy with one punch. I think this Luffyist version of Blackbeard is the real Teach. The more serious and schemer version is definitely Rox. So how far does Rox D Blackbeard's genius go? Well, he incited the 20-year plan that allowed him to obtain the exact devil fruit he needed, killing his fellow Nakama, Thatch, and then eventually turning in another one, Fire Fist Ace, just so he was able to steal the next fruit he wanted from Whitebeard, which he was able to do because he forced the whole world into a stalemate at the Paramount War, causing one of the greatest wars in all of One Piece history. The Apes capture allowed him to obtain a new title as Warlord of the Sea, although being a legendary feat on its own, being compared to fellow members like Mihawk and Boa Hancock, he only wanted it to infiltrate Impel Down and gather the strongest and most evil pirates from level 6. Strongest, most evil pirates. Remember that. Blackbeard used all this chaos to take down the strongest pirate, second only to the late king himself, and simultaneously make a fool out of the Marines by showing how he manipulated them by betraying the title of warlord they gave him. He embarrassed both pirates and world government a lot in one feat. Doesn't that sound like a goal of a certain pirate, Rock Caesar Beck? Wouldn't he have those same ambitions? I mean, it seems like an awfully dangerous game to play when you're just Blackbeard and you didn't even make a move for 40 years, knowing he would have every major power in the world coming after his head. Rox's revenge for the God Valley incident. But that is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the connections of Rox and Teach. He made his base of operations on Hachinoso, now known as Pirate Paradise Island. This is said to be the island and also the origin of both the Rox pirates and the Davy Back fights. So imagine my surprise when later on we find out this is also the current base of Blackbeard himself. Maybe Rox just missed the home in paradise he created. I think the more important aspect of the story is that the Davy Back fight was created here. And a lot of people give that credit to Rox. That being because the Davy Back fight is the most famous pirate game ever created, named after Davy Jones. It is a versus type game where the winner is allowed to recruit or headhunt any member of the loser's crew without any objections. We was first introduced to this though through a more comical means when the Foxy Pirates had a bout with the Straw Hat, but I am positive that the Rocks version was a lot darker and a lot more violent. After all, from what we know about the Rocks pirates, they was constantly fighting and killing each other. But still, even being such an unorthodox leader, Zerbeck managed to recruit some of the strongest, evil, and famous pirates in history. If this sounds familiar, that's because this was the exact method of recruitment that Blackbeard implemented when he invaded Impel Down, went all the way down to the most violent form, level 6, to recruit the members from the prison. He then instructed all the prisoners of the infamous level 6 to kill each other, and then says exactly, "I will free those who survive as members of my crew." This isn't just some passing moment. Oda had Sengoku rehash this point and point out exactly what Blackbeard did. Sengoku yelled out, "He freed select criminals," almost like he was baffled at the similarities to Rocks. If Zerbeck's soul is inside Blackbeard, I believe he can possess him, he can guide him, and I think he can speak to him, teaching him internally. I think this mentorship would explain how Blackbeard seems to know so much about how the One Piece world works, how to get the strongest crew, and all the knowledge he has about the physics of devil fruits that no one else seems to know. In fact, he has total belief in fate and total confidence in all his ambitions. We already know the knowledge that Rocksteady Zerbeck had was so dangerous to the world government. They not only teamed up with pirates to defeat him, but eradicated his whole existence from history. I don't think Oda would have made Rock's knowledge so important to the story if it didn't hold a great relevance to the endgame of One Piece. To wrap up Rocks and Blackbeard's agreement, I think he agreed to mentor him and teach him how to take over the world, bend it to his will, but Blackbeard had to agree to certain things like embarrassing the organizations that banded together to defeat him. And besides the inherited wills that every major player in One Piece has, they also all have sensei-like figures. Luffy has Rayleigh, Zoro has Mihawk, Kobe has Garp, and so on. And for Teach to hold such an important role in One Piece, I believe that Rock acts as his sensei. Although being weak enough to almost get defeated by one punch from Luffy, he was also strong enough. He's the one who gave Shanks his scar. Shanks made it clear to Whitebeard that it wasn't a sneak attack. Teach didn't get the drop on him, that he straight up somehow was able to overpower him and cause that scar. Whatever Shanks saw in Blackbeard made him concerned enough that he asked Whitebeard to let him handle Blackbeard. I think what Shanks witnessed is Rock's ability to take over if needed, because if Blackbeard starts losing or gets too close to death, Zerbeck's soul will take over because he can't allow him to die. This is his last chance. If Blackbeard dies, Rocks dies, and Rocks is not gonna let that happen. This is his final chance to obtain his goals. Also, we know his body's always been weird, so it's not the dark fruit that caused it. We know that because Marco during the Marineford said that Teach's body has always been strange. Now because of Wano, we have confirmation this has been a phenomenon since Teach was a kid. During Odin's flashback, we see Roger and Whitebeard's epic 3-day brawl. We see a young Shanks and Buggy talking about things that they heard about young Teach. Buggy tells Shanks that Teach didn't sleep during the entire ceasefire. Buggy goes on to explain that Teach has never slept in his entire life. Shanks thinks this is cool, but Buggy thinks he's a monster. But either way, it confirms that whatever is happening in Blackbeard has been a part of his identity most, if not his entire life. We don't know the exact age of Teach when he joined the Whitebeard Pirates, but if I had to guess, it'd be around 7 to 12. What we do know, however, though, is that he is 40 now. Considering Rocks was defeated 38 years ago, that means Teach would have been 2 when Rocks died, making it entirely possible that Rocks transmigrated his soul into Teach before or after he was defeated as a failsafe, so his will and ambitions can transcend death itself.